This new ruling just saved our beloved NCAA franchise, but it's also done a lot more. This week has been groundbreaking for college sports. For the first time ever, collegiate athletes are dropping their own personal logos. And check this out. Athletes across at least 5 different collegiate sports have already set up unofficial deals with companies to drop apparel, do paid autograph signings, etc. And make no mistake, this is only the beginning. The NCAA Board of Directors just voted on and passed new legislation which allows college football players to profit from their name, image, and likeness, or as it's now being called, NIL. They passed it today and it takes effect tomorrow, bro, July 1st. And in this video, we're gonna go over some of the details. Now, earlier this year, EA Sports announced the return of NCAA. And when they came out with the announcement, they said they were willing to make it with or without licensing. And while my personal enjoyment of the game won't be at all tied to whether or not we have real players, I'm still a member of the NCAA community, and I know that is not the case for many of our brothers and sisters, and I want us all to at least have the opportunity to fall in love with this game. I realize that players like myself are not the only ones who've been waiting for this to come back, so I'm definitely pulling for everybody to get what they want, as there's room for all of us to eat for sure. And while I may or may not make consistent content on the new release, full licensing will equate to more sales and a higher player count, which will greatly benefit the online community and make sure views and engagement are in a healthy place. As a fan of the game and knowing so many dope people in the community, why wouldn't you want that? You know what I'm saying? Today we just took a massive step in the right direction, like more than a massive step. Like we've been taking steps in the right direction for years. Today we just built a bridge and crossed over an impasse that we've been stuck at for like, I don't know how long now. And while the ruling does bring forth some legitimate concerns, it 100% offers a solution to an issue that gamers have suffered from for years now. And now that we've finally got what we've wanted for years and years, it's time to take a look at what this means for us, but also how it will completely change everything we know about college sports. But without further ado, y'all already know what time it is, bros. Cue the Wayne. Alright, before we jump into the video, I gotta give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Bespoke Post. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club that delivers these cool little boxes of top shelf goods from under the radar brands. Basically, they have you fill out a preference quiz so that they can become familiar with your interests. Then every single month, they send you cool products based off those interests. We're talking stuff like outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, and even live oysters and more. Now it's dope because you get to preview your box before they send it. So if you're not filling this month's box, you can swap it out for something else, or just skip it all together, and you're only gonna be charged for what you keep. So this one we just got cool little knife, you know what I'm saying? So I could probably use around the house, you feel me? Or if you actually go outside. And then we got the big one, the granddaddy of them all. Let's see what this is. Where the hell is my box cutter? Alright, man, so we basically have like this heavy duty travel bag. This is actually dope. Kind of like something you could use for business or really use for anything, but it looked like you bout business when you carrying this, you feel me? Now my wife was particularly happy with this one, and she was kind enough to demonstrate on some flat skirt steak that we're gonna enjoy a little bit later, and as you can see, definitely does the job. So if you want to check it out, I can get you 20% off your first box. Just go to bspk.me/FlemLo20, or better yet, click the link in the description. That'll take you to the website, and then just enter the code FlemLo20 when you're ready to check out. Shout out to Bespoke Post once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get it. So if you're not familiar with the situation or need a quick refresher, allow me to catch you up real quick. Back in 2009, Sam Keller filed a lawsuit against the NCAA for using his and other college players' name, image, and likeness across the NCAA video game franchises. Ed O'Bannon, a college basketball player and a bigger star at the time, filed a similar lawsuit shortly after, and those lawsuits led to the NCAA video game franchise being canceled. The players wanted to be compensated for the use of their NIL, and while EA was actually willing to do that, the NCAA wouldn't allow it because it would violate their amateurism rules, basically a BS rule designed to avoid paying quote-unquote student athletes. And this model has stayed in place for pretty much the NCAA's entire 100-year existence. Over the past decade, the money the NCAA and its athletic programs bring in on the backs of their quote-unquote student athletes has continued to get more and more outlandish, but the athletes themselves have continued to only get a scholarship, which in cases of even somewhat well-known players is less than they could earn if they just had full rights to their NIL. Not to mention the price of these scholarships is inflated anyway, and in most cases, especially for athletes, they aren't actually worth the amount the school charges for them. The NCAA basically built a system where the very foundation was faulty. It was built on a fabricated yet well-told story that we all, at least for some period of our lives, bought into. But as coaches continue to rake in millions and every college sporting event has sponsors and boosters and massive TV deals, the fact that back in 2016 a college swimmer couldn't even accept a waffle maker on the Ellen show without risking her NCAA eligibility, like, it finally got ridiculous enough for people to say, all right, man, enough is enough. Somebody that you're all familiar with actually suffered greatly from this rule, and that is destroying. This man's still kicking 80-yard field goals in his backyard because a few years ago he had to choose between making money on his YouTube channel or continuing his football career at UCF. And while things have definitely turned out okay for dude, had he had the opportunity to keep his channel, keep it monetized, and continue to play football, who knows where he'd be right now. It's BS, he got messed over. Now, like I said, this thing has been in the works for multiple years now. It's been an extremely slow process, but we've been slowly trucking forward day after day. Back in 2019, I did a video following an NCAA court appearance where they had a senator walk out on them because their attempt to defend their suspension of then college basketball star James Wiseman was so ridiculous, and they basically just tried to avoid answering any question. The only answer they ever have is, well, because amateurism. Like, everything is because amateurism. Like, why did, because amateurism? Like, you know what I'm saying? Now, there were multiple hearings and a few goings on during the 2-year period between now and that case I was just talking about, but all you really need to know is what I'm about to say next. Today, the NCAA Board of Directors voted to make these rules official. Here we go. College athletes can engage in NIL activities that are consistent with the law of the state where the school is located. Colleges and universities are responsible for determining whether those activities are consistent with state law. Now, the second thing is this: student athletes who attend a school in a state without NIL law can engage in this type of activity without violating NCAA rules related to name, image, and likeness. Now, this is important because some states like California have already passed state laws allowing students to profit off of their NIL legally. Cali actually did the Fair Pay for Play Act, I think 2 years ago now, and lots of states have followed since. Only thing is, them trying to get out ahead of this may kind of backfire, as states that did nothing are now going to get pretty much the same benefits, and schools in states that already passed laws now have to follow 2 sets of laws. But I'm sure they're going to work out a synergy between the school's NIL rules and the state law, but you just never know. Last thing I'm going to say here before we move on to the next thing is that I actually think schools located in states that have already passed laws will have an advantage. And the reason I say that is because I think the states that haven't done anything, I don't think a lot of those schools are going to have their rules ready and in place as quickly as schools in states like California, which may give them an early head start the first couple of years that this new NIL law is in place. College athletes can use a professional service provider for NIL activities, meaning they can sign with an agent or a management firm. And then lastly, it says student athletes should report NIL activities consistent with state law or school and conference requirements to their school, which is pretty much just a common sense protection right there. They don't want dudes out here sponsoring non-reputable companies or things that will be in direct conflict with, the image of the school and the conference that they're in. This means student athletes can sign brand deals or endorsements, sell merch, star in commercials, or have their name, image, and likeness featured in the NCAA video game that's set to come out in another year or two. In hindsight, EA definitely saw this coming like the rest of us. That's why I believe they jumped out on a limb and announced the game earlier this year. They knew what was up. Now, it is also important to know that this is an interim policy and it's intended to last until either federal legislation is passed or a more permanent NIL rule can be created by the NCAA. Now, for the last couple of years, when it comes to the whole pay the players thing, I've been on the train of just allow them to make money from their NIL. It just makes sense and it keeps the schools from having to decide who makes what. This way, the market decides. If you're popular enough to secure a deal, that's on you. And while I do believe the obvious truth that the players should get a cut of TV deals and things like that, this is a huge first step for college players, but it is going to create a pretty big need. I worry about some of these cats doing the most and not knowing how to handle themselves, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be people in place to help them to manage their business and manage their money. I think now, instead of taking ballroom dancing or some BS, they should take a class specifically for student athletes to help teach them how to navigate building their brand, how to manage their money, how to make smart deals, etc. Now, some of these cats will inevitably mess up. Some will do too much. Some will sign bad deals, but some will change their families' lives. Some will jumpstart their brand and live off it for the rest of their days. Some will win. I just really hope people don't overreact early on. Allow this thing to play itself out. Allow it to balance. Let's put smart rules in place. Let's put protections in place for the players where necessary. Let's just keep a level head about this. But in case you don't know, people, because I damn sure do, here's what's actually gonna happen, all right? When one of these dudes messes up, people who are against college athletes being paid will say, see, look, I told you this would happen. I wish we could go back to the good old days, because it's so damn easy to sell nostalgia. What they will forget is that during the good old days, pretty much every player got screwed over, all right? So now, while some will still probably get messed over and make bad decisions, it's definitely better to have a choice and have an opportunity to learn and grow and get better. I don't think that's debatable, but I'm sure I'm wrong about that. A lot of these athletes are more mature now than they ever were in the past. They're media trained, they conduct themselves better on social media than a lot of grown-ups that's already in the league. So I think a lot of these guys are really gonna make the most of this amazing opportunity. And if they're open to it, they're definitely gonna learn way more about money management and just how to survive as an adult than they ever would have with a standard college education. I speak from experience, okay? That's just if we being honest. Now, I could go deeper, but I want to keep this video short, or at least short for a FlemLo video, right? So I'll wrap it up with how I think this affects each league. First off, I think it helps college basketball. I think they can finally stop losing all their potential star players to the G League and overseas teams. While there will be some good and some bad, I think if we look back in 10 years, we're going to see a net positive for the NBA. The reason I think that is because many young players leave college early because college sports is forcing them to starve when they could be somewhere earning 7-figure deals. So they leave school and go to the NBA early, but oftentimes they are not ready. If they stay in college and make money through their brand, they not only develop more as a player, but their brand develops, as college is a great place to market players. And while going overseas or maybe playing in the G League are two tempting options, I think looking back, if we compare a guy who goes and plays in the tournament and makes it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four or even win a national championship, like, I think that player is going to be more popular in the league, at least starting off, than a dude that goes and plays overseas. The American public will already be familiar with him. They'll know his story. They would have followed him. You know what I'm saying? There'll already be a connection there. So while that doesn't make college basketball the be-all, end-all, it at least allows it to compete. You know what I'm saying? Because right now, the way things have been going the last several years, there was almost no upside to being a star player in the NCAA. Like, you would get that marketing, but because you couldn't monetize it then, it wasn't worth the risk. In football, the first league I think of is the XFL, oddly enough. So the XFL and the USFL, which I made a dope video about recently that y'all should definitely check out after this, but the marketing part, right? That marketing thing we were just talking about for college basketball. Imagine a college quarterback, not really an NFL prospect, maybe he's too small, doesn't have the physical tools, but he's gritty and he's a winner. All right, he win a bunch of games at a mid-major, break records, finish 8th in the Heisman voting, you know what I'm saying? Has a solid level of fame. First off, that dude's getting paid in college, all right? He gonna eat in college in whatever little town he's in. Then with the additional branding and ability to market himself, now when he goes to the XFL or the USFL or one of these leagues, one, he's gonna have more power in negotiating his contract because his brand is already solid enough to help market the league itself, which is gonna need that. Sign a couple of those type of cats per year and soon you're gonna have a bunch of notable players running around who all have solid brands and their own fans that they can bring in. For the NFL, guys can become more seasoned in college, meaning they don't gotta go from ramen noodles to millions overnight. They can go from making 50K, 100K, 500K, depending on the player, and then make that jump to millions. So they already have some experience dealing with brands and interviews and making money. I actually think scouting becomes easier because you know how certain players will react with a little bit of money in their pockets. I think the frequency of NFL busts goes down significantly, as the players who ain't gonna know how to act with money in their pocket are likely gonna snitch on themselves while they're in college. Now I saved college football for last because I have no idea how this is gonna affect college football, bro. I think a fan like me will be more interested. Like, these are fascinating times and I love storylines, man. I love new stuff. I love when I can't predict the ending. I have no idea how this is gonna go, so that fascinates me. But I think a lot of traditional college football fans will leave the sport, especially in the South. Like, I'm from here and people don't like change and they tend to dislike athletes who make a lot of money. I think that fan is out. Like, I think that fan is going to be out of college football in the next 5-10 years. I think they'll be done. They'll go somewhere else. But I also think that maybe this creates new fans. Fans who connect with individual player brands and therefore support that player, even if he plays for a school that they have no affiliation with. And hopefully you grew up watching Westerns with your dad or your granddad, because for these first couple of years, this thing is about to be the wild, wild west. So brace yourself, people, because the world of NIL, name, image, and likeness is about to get really, really interesting.